Doug, it is Friday and
Yes, sir.
I'm ready to be here.
Yeah, I'm ready to be here too.
Man,
I'm
what a
ready to
great
be
week.
here and I'm ready to be there.
Man, I was there this week.
That's one of my family's favorite sayings is when we arrive somewhere, someone will say, "We're there," or "We're here."
Oh, brother. I fell back in love with my hometown this week. I was
Yeah, what's the name of that steak place you went to?
House of Coma.
Yeah, our buddy was telling me that's pretty fantastic.
It was a fun experience. I showed a friend the street that I grew up on in Evansville. It's Lombard. It starts like south end of it is almost projects. It's low income apartments, and it goes to duplexes to 1,000 square feet, and then it goes all the way to the north end. It's all about a mile long, and there were, I would say, about $1 million value properties. But cruising up that, it just kind of reminds me of my roots and where I came from. And even though we were lower middle income, we would eat at Hobbs Steakhouse when we were kind of having a big deal, which it feels like a bougie little place compared to the House of Como. So both of those are really interesting
Cash
places.
only at the House of Como. Is that what I understand?
Well, I didn't know that, and I think that's
Oh.
true. So yeah, it kind of I met with some friends while I was in Evansville, and they had hung out there a number of times, and the original owner, who is no longer living, evidently was one of his former employees, followed him home and knew he had cash, put a gun to his head and pulled the trigger even, and he somehow survived. So
Oh my
yeah,
goodness.
yeah. So that's the House of Como. It's if you're in Evansville and you've not been there or you've not been there lately, I'd stop by. It's a fun little place to have dinner.
Well, you had the disclaimer up there, careful on the boat ramp. And I wanted to put that on there because last weekend was Memorial Day weekend, and there's a lot of boat ramp activity. I was working the church boat. We were getting the church pontoon ready with speakers and amplifiers and all this stuff, and it was by the boat ramp, and I got to see a lot of marriages get stronger. And one in particular, this guy was backing in, kind of like a fish and ski boat, and his wife was on the boat, and she kept slamming it in reverse. You know, there's controls like this on a boat. She'd slam it in reverse, and you'd hear it go, "Wah!" And it was still connected to the trailer, and they couldn't figure out what was going on. And Pastor Rob, he said, "Hey, hey," and he said, "Hey, you might want to disconnect that." And so you got to be careful on the boat ramp. And even if you're not a boater and you're looking for something fun to do this weekend, all you have to do is YouTube like boat ramp stories or boat ramp incidents, and you're going to be entertained. It's just good quality fun.
Boy, what is the city north of Washington State in Canada? What is that? Something.
Bell?
No, it's in Canada. It's
Oh, Vancouver?
Vancouver. Vancouver. Um, it wasn't a boat ramp, it was an RV park.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
Connie and I had to improve our communication skills and
Yeah, a lot of marriage
building. So the boat ramp and the RV park after dark, like when you park after dark, I took out the power pole that particular night, and it made me think of the boat ramp.
Yeah.
Those are places that you can improve your communication skills with one another if you haven't mastered that yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Doug, last week we spoke about poor habits, which is kind of, you can look at that word poor a couple ways, like bad or no wealth habits, either way, that probably are worth kind of acknowledging and trying to avoid as possible. I thought this week we might talk a little bit about profitable habits, and profitable either being economically or profitable to live life to the fullest. And I just thought I'd kick that idea off of what profitable habits would you offer to some youngster that's thinking about moving forward in life? How would they most profitably live life let's say they're 22.
I, s- I just think these profitable habits are good for 22. I think they're good for 12. I think they're good for 85.
Yeah.
And they're timeless and they can stay with you as you mature and understand them. And I didn't list these in any particular order, but again, kind of like last week, coming up with 10 was not difficult. It
Yeah.
was a lot of fun. And you guys could chat GPT or what's the one you told me about?
Perplexity.
Perplexity. You could use AI to generate these, or you can just turn the switch on in your head and how you uniquely see the world and come up with 10 wealthy habits that could be pretty helpful to me, could be pretty helpful to those you love. But the first one that came to my mind was bringing others along. It's
Okay.
a wealthy habit. And so if you bring someone else along for the journey, whatever it is you're doing, you're going to give that person exposure to maybe something that they couldn't experience or do on their own. And they'll see that you can do it. And that might change their mindset. Maybe I can do it too.
I got to do that this week. I was kind of like, I believe if you have this very kind of high energy impulse that hits your head, you should do it. And I was visiting a friend in Evansville that is near his finish line, and I noticed out the window of his assisted living there were 3 empty bird feeders, and I thought, if only there was something I could do, Doug. And turns out the target was only 5 minutes away, and so 5 minutes to get there, 5 minutes to find them, and 5 minutes to come back. 15 minutes of my life, and I got to bring my sister along to let her kind of enjoy
Cool.
the idea of putting some bird seed in this guy can't do anything other than look out the window and see the birds come. So that was an opportunity to do what you're saying there.
You've done that for me. I mean, when I first started at Gimbal back in 2003, we'd go out we just go over to Starbucks. And you'd bring me along, or you'd bring me to an appointment to meet with somebody. And I just think that's a real great habit to get into. And not an easy one, because it's easier just to go off and do things yourself. You control your time better. You don't have to talk to anybody. You can listen to a podcast. You can enjoy the radio.
I was at an economic forum last night, and the people hosting it had some spare seats, so I brought Caleb and Kevin along with me.
Oh, goodness.
And
You didn't tell me that.
Yeah, and so
that's bringing them along.
Yeah, that was a 2.5-hour economic presentation, which you probably didn't know that we do that on behalf of you guys. But the owner of this particular company is a billionaire, and I had made Caleb do this the last time he came to this, but with Kevin, I said, I want you to go shake his hand. And the idea was, how many billionaires are you going to meet in your lifetime? This particular one was standing there allowing you to get some time with him. And I thought, go shake his hand, Kevin, because if you can shake a billionaire's hand, you can realize he's really no different than you are.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really, really cool opportunity.
Yeah. I don't know. I'll be curious to debrief him and see what he thought about that. So yeah, I think that's a great idea. Bring people along to, like, you can even bring them along to bad experiences, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Cause
Yeah.
if I,
Like one of the things that you did for me early on, and my dad and mom did this for me when I was a little kid too. I'm completely comfortable in a funeral.
yeah. Yeah.
And so those situations can be very difficult for a lot of people. But if you bring someone along to a funeral, you might get an experience, a story that you didn't know before. And it might make you appreciate life, or you might just comfort somebody at the right time.
Well, and just think, is there, like, I can't think of a more vulnerable time in life for people, and to experience the wealth of that moment with somebody, that you can see some really amazing things, you can learn some things, or you can just encourage somebody that really appreciates that at that point. That's really good. So bring somebody along. What else comes to mind, Doug?
Boy, this was fun. And again, this just took a second. Here's one. Having a vision. And my friend Lance likes to say, have a squinty eye vision. I really like that. Have a squinty, like when you're looking out there into the future, like to focus in, you might have to squint your eyes. And having a squinty eye vision is really cool because the picture's not so clear.
Yeah,
And so there's some flexibility to not keep that plan. You might have to go around it a few times. You might have to go backwards a few times, but just have kind of an idea where you're going. And with that vision, you're going to bring a lot of people along. It could be your coworkers, it could be your family, it might be your neighbors. But that vision, not many people have a vision.
well, like I think where I'm sitting right now, not many years ago, 6 years ago, was a cooler. Like in this building, there was a cooler somewhere right around here. And
Under construction? What do you mean?
this was a floral shop and there were
Oh,
coolers all in
yes.
this wall.
Yeah, okay.
And you had the vision to say, I think this is the location of Gimbal. And I don't think I even came to see it. I go, well, if you think it's where we need to be, then we'll make it work, right?
Yeah.
And so this building, it looks beautiful when you look at the backdrop here. It did not look like this when we bought this place. It was kind of a train wreck in here.
The only vision I saw with this place was a trend. And this is actually pre-COVID.
Yeah, yeah.
The construction was during COVID,
Right.
but the vision was pre-COVID. And the idea was, who likes to go to an office?
Right.
Wouldn't it be cooler if it was a destination? And so what happens, Keith? We have people honk when they drive past us all the time. We've had people out on a walk in the Monon stop by. And so it really became more of a lifestyle location, which I think suits our personalities and our coworkers' personalities a lot more than a class B plus office space. Nothing wrong with that. We might be back there someday. But this really was a fun vision. And then we got to share the plate with people. That's another one of mine. If you can share the plate with people, you're going to end up with something a lot better than your squinty eye vision because they actually know how to do stuff.
When you say share the plate, what are you saying?
Hey, I've got this vision of a office in downtown Carmel. How would you build it? What colors would you make it? What's the ceiling look like? You pick this ceiling.
Yeah.
What flooring should we have? You know, and so if you're able to share the plate and allow other people to contribute to it, maybe they put some lima beans on there, or add some seasoning, or maybe they eat off it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been a lot of people here who've benefited from your investment here
Yeah.
economically. And so that's a pretty cool thing too.
Manuel and Roger, two Portuguese men in Amarillo, Texas, when we sat down at the Big Texan in 2006, said, don't order the appetizers. They're too much. Here's ours. Like I never met these people in my life.
Okay.
And 2 or 3 weeks later, they threw the biggest party that I've ever been to for us in Santa Maria, California, a Portuguese party with tri-tip, and they literally shared their plate with us back in that day.
And was that the first time you'd had tri-tip?
It was, yeah. They introduced us. It's a Portuguese kind of cut and seasoning that they taught us about.
And because you experienced that, that's one of my family's favorite is tri-tip.
Yeah. And somebody shared the plate with us. What else, Doug?
Man, let's see what else I got. So a couple of these other ones are ones that probably everybody thinks about, but I think self-control is really important for wealth. If you're able to have some self-control, that could be with the fork, that could be with your paycheck. And when you have some self-control, that can lead to some kind of savings, which then once you have that, you can have an investment.
Right.
And there's nothing cooler than being an owner.
Hmm.
And so I think that's just the best is when you have some type of ownership in something. And my father-in-law told me something really interesting last week. I said something like, "Oh, that Tesla truck, I just love it. I can't decide if it's good looking or not. It's just stunning to me." And he looked at me and goes, "Do you know what I think's cool? Stuff that's not expensive." And I thought, I mean, it really stopped me in my tracks. I thought, man, that's a good definition of cool. And that was unique to him. But you can't even start unless you have some self-control to not overdo it, whatever that is.
I think one of the people I asked this question to, that was kind of what they told me. They said, like, priding yourself in being the person in your friend group that drives the junkiest car. Like he said, that's kind of a cool hat. And this guy, he drives cool cars, but he doesn't.
Yeah.
He didn't in order that he could. And yeah. Well, Bob Warren.
And you have to be careful with that it doesn't become a badge of honor.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I've kind of done that in my life, and that's not a good way to go.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, I get it. I don't think my Lumina van became a badge of honor. I think it was just, I couldn't help myself at that point, but, yeah. Bob Warren, a friend of mine, taught me, the definition of wealthy is being content with what you have, and that's the wealthiest person you'll ever meet. And contentment, I believe, is a learned idea. Like, contentment could be natural for you, but in general, little kids aren't born content, right? They want the next thing. And so teaching people contentment, what that looks like. And the opposite of contentment is a thing called want, W-A-N-T. And want can be a curse. Like, I want more, I always want more. And it can be associated with greed or gluttony or things like that. And so contentment is a form of self-control too, I think. But learning that, probably if you have somebody that can help you learn it, if you don't know it, is really a good thing.
Yeah. Well, do you have any that are popping on your list?
Well, and I was looking at the things that friends said, but my own, like a wealthy habit, I think is like the opposite of it would be more time I spend on this is going to be poor, but to do what I like what do I like to do? I like to spend time with my family. Like, that's a wealthy use of my time, um and then to just kind of like doing those things, like do what I like and then like it, and then do it as long as I can. So I think I'm as passionate about helping our clients with their investments that I've ever been in my career, which is weird to think that I'm this far into it and as passionate as I am, but it allows me to keep doing it. And so I'm very fortunate and very wealthy in that situation. In my 40s, Caleb was born when I was 40. So we had 5 kids, I think 9 and younger, and I was 40 years old. In that decade, when I look at pictures of Keith, my face was rounder. And so, like, taking care of my body is something that is a wealthy habit. And when I was jotting that down, physically, mentally, and spiritually are all components of that, taking care of my body. And I think I ran 2 or 3 mini marathons in my 40s and 50s. And
Yeah.
I'd probably do that today
You
if I
would run, was it 10 miles on your birthday?
Yeah, I did that for my whole decade.
And you would bring others along.
Yeah. And they would help me to do it. I told my daughter Kelly a quote a few weeks ago that it comes from King Solomon, that where 2 people go, it's easier, and if 3 people are there, if somebody falls, it's easier to get you back up. And when I would run those 10 miles, it was much easier to run it with somebody than just to run it alone.
And that another great concept of this winning concept I was explaining to my son LJ this week. Again, this is from my friend Lance, is this idea of stacking. And that's bringing people, when you can stack 2 things together at one time, it's just a win. And so LJ, our oldest, went to play baseball with his buddies this week. What did he do? He took his little brother Colton with him. So he got to hang out with his little brother and play baseball with his friends at the same time. So if you can do this and that at one time, man, you're like accomplished. You got like 2 days work into one.
And I'd say that's even different than multitasking, because multitasking is doing two things at once, but you're
You're
incorporating,
purposing.
yeah, you're incorporating what you're doing with who you do it with, and that's a really big deal. I think what I saw from a lot of people that I was talking to, and what I know as well, like I'm very intentionally today building friendships with people younger than me. And I know that if you build one-on-one friendships with somebody older than you and somebody younger than you, it creates a wealth in your life that you can't really explain to people. Like I took Caleb last Friday to have lunch with the guy that owned Icy Hot.
That's awesome.
Yeah, like
Yeah, that's a good lunch, I bet.
yeah, like Shaquille O'Neal is advertising for Icy Hot, and this very humble man once owned that,
That's right.
and he walks around Indianapolis area, nobody really cares, but I let Caleb meet him so he could learn some wisdom from him. But yeah, it's a big deal.
That's really cool.
I think a like relationships are important, and I think a wealthy decision is to marry well.
Mhm.
And I think probably that sounds really simple, don't you think? Like the opposite of that is going to be a poor decision, right? Like, and so I think if I were going to encourage somebody in their marriage process, I would really want to help them think through, what does this relationship look like? Am I entering into this kind of prematurely? Have I thought through what this really means, and helping them think through that? Like the blessing to have Connie in my life is greater than any financial thing we would have. And I've seen the opposite side of that for other people. Yeah. And economically, if you split up a marriage, you're generally cutting all the efforts of your life economically in half. And somebody told me just recently that somebody had 2 or 3 of those, and you just keep cutting it in half. And
Sometimes spending more than your net worth on an attorney.
yeah,
I've
yeah.
heard that recently.
Well, and the probability wise, I think the data, I've not seen the data, I hear everybody use it all the time, is that half of all marriages end in divorce. And that doesn't mean half the people that get married get divorced. It means there are people in that pool of people that get married that are repeat divorcees, which skews the numbers that way. But it's clearly a decision that doesn't work well for a lot of people. So putting in the upfront time for somebody to figure out what works well. Like maybe if you're thinking of getting married, why not go find somebody that's been not just married for a long time, but happily married, and pick their brains for what are some of the tricks that have helped them get down that road a long time, because that is a great thing. And to even be alongside of somebody that's had that and see the joy in their eyes. When I was visiting this young man that was in the nursing home this week, his parents have been married. I think they told me, I forget what they told me, but they're in their late 80s. And I took a picture of them walking hand in hand at the restaurant we had lunch at, just because it was such a beautiful picture that at 87, they just love to be with each other.
Yeah, that's very cool.
What else you got, Doug?
I've got a couple more on here. I think a wealthy habit is prayer. And the best thing about prayer is you can pray anytime. I love to imagine the person at the stoplight next to me. Like I could pray for that person and they don't even know it, or you might have a steering wheel prayer later on today, just yourself. But the idea that you can talk to that very powerful force anytime you want, and any hour of the day, and there's no limits. I think that's one of the greatest strengths a person could have.
I think that's a component of what we do. We don't necessarily do it together, but there's a saying that pray for wisdom and it'll be given to you. And I think helping other people with their resources requires tons of wisdom. Like we get ideas thrown at us on a constant basis that we really haven't ever seen before. And then trying to provide a wise solution to these people. I think it just requires some divine intervention to help us understand how to help you.
Yeah, I got a couple others, but they kind of center around what we've already talked about. I know one of his great habits, wealthy habits, is he's consistently a good time management person. I listed that out as knowing your priorities. But I think if you can be consistent in knowing what you're about and being okay with your priorities from your squinty eye vision, those types of habits can really help you out. It can help you plan your week. Mike Tyson said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And you're going to, even knowing your priorities, you're going to get punched in the face and you're going to have to pivot. But if they're listed out, whether that be a weekly, an annual, whatever you want to do, I'd encourage you to know your priorities.
Boy, and I think setting those priorities early can help you make some really bad financial decisions. Like,
Do you need a water?
I'm getting a cough drop right here. So, for example, if your family is a high priority, and you know that as a career decision, it can help you navigate career decisions. So the boss might say, "Hey, you can thank you, Doug. You can work 12-hour days here, 6 days a week. And if your priority is your family, you can boldly tell the boss, no, I can't. I need to probably go somewhere else," which is a hard decision. But that priority leads to increasing the probability of successful marriage too, because a lot of times some of these marriages have fallen apart because of workaholism or things that happen by working and being away from home too much.
If I could like sum all of this up, I would go back. Keith mentioned our friend Bob, who's passed away now. He's a great man. If I could sum all of these great habits, it's basically just like get over yourself and serve somebody else. Look for what is in their best interest, and then go for that.
And I'd say, like, practically, the one thing that I haven't thrown out there, but I would tell anybody the most practical thing you can do, and I think Dave Ramsey's fine, but it's just spend less than you make. Like, if you can do that, a lot of the financial problems that people have are just that's kind of getting over yourself, right? Like, to spend less than you make.
One of my good friends, he says, my dad told me to spend less than I make, and then I spent all of that.
Yeah. Like I'm pretty sure that is the key to basic financial planning that most people can't do today. And unfortunately, it goes back to self-control or getting over yourself. But it's just saying no to things. And that was another thing Bob told me, that he said, my prayer for you, Keith, is you can say no to good things so you can say yes to the excellent things. And it's the good stuff that's going to trip people up. It's not the excellent stuff. And just letting too much good into your life is going to create a lot of problems.
It's really hard to see the good stuff in a prosperous society.
Yeah. Yeah.
But once you can see it, there's no turning back.
You're saying the good or the excellent?
The good. Once you can just see the good for what it is.
Yeah. Distraction, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a big deal.
It's hard to do that because it feels good chasing the good stuff.
Yeah. And we're cheered on to do it.
Yeah. But just, I think for me personally, by the grace of God, I was able to say no to it because I didn't realize how busy having 5 kids and running a business would really be. And then I didn't understand how your energy level drops off the time. Like, all those things are a big deal if you're going about life. Doug, thanks for thinking about this and having the vision to tell me to have a squinty eye vision.
Yeah, isn't that fun?
Yeah. Yeah. Hope you guys have a good weekend, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week.